and growing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I said to Miss before when she go up and she goes to America, and I said to her, does he go to Forest School? Because that's what he needs to be doing. He's got that creative curriculum.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We've still got more people coming through, so we will start in a few moments. Thank you for your patience already. It's nice to see so many people come on board for this meeting. And equally very exciting that we're working in partnership with Roots of Empathy, an organisation I've known about for many years. I think about 10, 12 years ago, our chief executive, Jill, who should be joining us, spoke about this organisation. She'd had a presentation within the City Council, so she's always kind of infused me with the good work that the organisation has done. So really, really pleased that we've also got the president of Roots of Empathy here, all the way in from Toronto as well. So people are still joining the meeting. So before I introduce you to Katie and to Mary, we're not going to do a round robin of introductions because there's quite a lot of people joining, but we do have representation from the likes of CCG, which is the Clinical Commissioning Group, which Mary, they deal with all the health infrastructure throughout the UK, so CCG's clinical commissioning groups. So the one for Liverpool is represented. We also have representation from the local authority, Liverpool City Council, and some staff from public health. We have some from the education department, so Schools Improvement Liverpool are here as well. And as you know, we'll be working across primary schools. We have Liverpool Learning Partnership, which is very much about the student pupil voice. So it's really good that Elaine, the chief executive, and Kath, who works in areas of support and mental health across whole school approaches to mental health, is also on this. We also have staff from various schools, which is really good to see. So welcome. For the purposes of this meeting, if you could just ensure that everybody's on mute, that works effectively. And if you do want to take yourself off the video, you're more than welcome to do that, because that might just make for a more smooth running. We've still got people joining, so I'm going to hand over to Katie Cohen, who is the British manager. Are you the British manager, Katie, or the English manager?
Yeah, I oversee England and Wales.
England and Wales, there you go. And then Katie's going to introduce us to Mary Gordon.
Okay, well, it's great to be here with you all. So thank you so much for joining. Lovely to have such a wonderful turnout. And we're super excited to be, kickstarting the programme in Liverpool. And hopefully you're going to feel enthused about the programme and want to join us. So the way that we want to run this session is I'm going to introduce you to Mary Gordon, who's our founder and president of Roots of Empathy. And she's going to tell you a little bit about her story and how she came to set up Roots of Empathy. And then I'm going to give you a bit more of the nuts and bolts about how the programme works. And that'll be a presentation that will last about 20 minutes. And then we'll have some time for questions at the end of that. But we hope you're going to find it interesting. And yeah, if you've got questions or you think of questions as you're going through, you could just type those in the chat. And Rose Cho, who's our UK coordinator, is going to help us with those and let us know when they're appearing. So let me introduce Mary to you. So Mary Gordon is an award-winning educator. She's a social entrepreneur, best-selling author, parenting expert, child advocate, and she has created an international children's charity, Roots of Empathy. Ms. Gordon has consulted and presented to the UN, the WHO, UNICEF, Nelson Mandela Children's Foundation and governments. She's had several dialogues with the Dalai Lama, and she's a regular keynote speaker at conferences and TEDx talks. She's been honoured with the Governor General of Canada Award for Innovation and is a recipient of the Order of Canada, the Order of Ontario and the Order of Newfoundland and Labrador. And she's also a recipient of the Queen's Golden and Silver Jubilee medals. Mary's considered a serial social entrepreneur, and in 1981 she created Canada's first and largest school-based parenting centres, which have been used as a best practice model internationally. In 1996, based on her belief that the absence of empathy underscores violence of all kinds, she set out to break this cycle by developing empathy in children, and as a result she created Roots of Empathy programme. So I'd like to hand over to Mary now. Thank you for joining us. It's morning for Mary as she's in Toronto, and afternoon for us, but we're very pleased that you can join us, Mary.
Well, thank you, Katie, very much. And Damian, we had a little chat before you opened the screen. And hello, Liverpool. And how lovely to see such a really great smorgasbord of community. And the way Roots of Empathy goes ahead in the world, we build collaboration at the community level, and we deliver our programs through the school. And that's because school is really at the heart of communities. It's where all the children go, and we want to follow the children. I guess a very quick, and Katie, you'll have to keep me on time if you don't mind. Can you wave at me vigorously when there's five? When there's 5 minutes, maybe when there's 5 minutes left, start flailing your hands about, okay? Yeah. But I'd just like to share with you the quick story, and thank you for telling me, Damian, that Jill was aware of us and you've been aware of us for some time, because Roots of Empathy does not advertise. Somebody said to me, but you do proselytize. I don't know, I've never thought of it that way, but we put our hope and our future in the hands of those who have had the program, who speak to their colleagues about it. And that's the way we like to move ahead. The very quick history. People always like to know, so why did you do this? Well, I started a long time ago as a kindergarten teacher. It was my first paid job. Prior to that, I had volunteered in prisons as a teenager, and I had done a lot of poverty work. And I was amazed at the power of family by the time I started kindergarten. It took me not very long before I realized the inequity with which children presented themselves to schools. So Katie mentioned that in '81, I started Canada's first parenting and family literacy centers. That was the case, and then they became policy because they made more impact on the readiness levels of children once they entered the school system than anything else had. And they cost almost nothing because they were built on the power of love. And I say the power of love unabashedly. I think love is the best motive for learning we have. We call it many things. I'm calling it love to you because it's the relationship that the child, no matter how young they are, has with the family in terms of support. And we know not every family is equally able to support the child. So I started these parenting centers, and the idea was that families in the poorest and most unsuccessful school districts in the Toronto area would be able to bring their children to play in this big room that we would set up. No instruction, just construction. And the idea was families would make friends in their neighborhood. And of course, I invited public health to come because public health nurses solve every problem. They have the widest vision. They are able to see when really a specialist needs to be involved, and working with public health from the very beginning. And I have to say, these amazing nurses would don their jeans, leave their briefcase in the car, sit on the floor and interact with the parents in the most vulnerable communities. So from all that work, I discovered huge amounts of child abuse, neglect, and domestic violence. I had my deepest impact with teenage mothers, and I personally kept working with this one group of teenage mothers in Regent's Park, which was named after, one of your famous areas there in England. And what I came to realize was that there was an intergenerational cycle of violence and poor parenting. That these young mothers, 13 was the youngest that I worked with. God love them, they were children. They needed hugs, they needed acceptance, they needed permission. They needed to cry. They needed all the basic human things that they had been robbed of. And having a baby was a way for them to have someone to love them. And what did they get from society? Nothing but criticism. So I learned there about the impact. And I mean, this is very early. We're talking the 80s. We did not have the neuroscience to tell us that this intergenerational cycle has to do with epigenetics and all kinds of other neuroscience stories. I used to say back then, love grows brains, that the best way to help a little baby or a young child to advance in the world is to love them well and to be able to join them rather than orchestrate them. And funnily enough, I think I might have a fancy education, but my biggest education was at the foot of these families. So I realized that, you know, we can help a little bit in those circumstances, but if we don't make a sea change of impact on these little children, many of whom were growing up with the only influence they had in their life was violence between their family members. So I realized the common denominator in all the violence, whether it was gratuitous societal violence, which was on a steady uptick, or whether it was intimate violence, that it was the absence of empathy. There were no villains here, but because people didn't develop empathy in the attachment relationship in the earliest years of life, they didn't develop the capacity for empathy. So my two aha moments way back in dem dare old days was that empathy is innate, but it develops within the attachment relationship. It can either flourish or fade. And I believe it is always possible to reignite it, but there is a critical period. And, you know, the window of opportunity does not slam shut, but you have your deepest brain development is happening in those early years. And if you can make that empathic, that child will be resilient for life. So you can protect them against toxic stress, against ACEs and all those things that will come into their life if you just ensure that they can have a secure attachment relationship. The other thing was that if we were able to bring that relationship into the classroom where all the children are and allow them experientially to witness over the course of a school year another model of what love looks like. There's no one perfect model of parenting or loving or anything, but children know when they are in the presence of love. So I have to say the actual moment that I created the program was visiting one of the teenage moms who had just had her second baby, the second little girl. And she hadn't been to the Teenage Moms program for some time. And I stopped and knocked on the door of her illegal boarding house. And she opened the door to me, and she had a big gash on her eyebrow. And first thing she said to me was, "Mayor, he didn't mean it. He told me he's sorry. He'll never do it again." And he even cried. So I have to say, here she is with her little toddler holding her leg, and this baby girl who's going to grow up into the fourth generation that I was aware of violence in the family. So, I mean, apart from a hug, I had to do more for those little children. So driving home is where Roots of Empathy was born. And it was not born out of love and peace. It was born out of rage. I was incensed that these little innocent girls would grow up like this. So I decided I'm taking a secure attachment relationship into the classroom. We won't tell children anything. We will allow them to see. Because we know with young children, and I think with most of us, life's deep lessons are more or less absorbed rather than taught. So I always say empathy can't be taught in formal ways, but it can be caught experientially. You don't become a kind, empathic person because you're saying, okay, it's Tuesday, you're going to be kind today, or a flashcard you put up, or putting up on the blackboard instances of kindness. That's vicious. So this is how you do it from the inside out. And I really believe in community. I have always believed in community. And Damian, I'm so grateful that you have brought community to the table. I was just working with Michael Fullen the other day. He and I, you folks I know have worked with Michael Fullen. Have you in your education folk in Liverpool? I can't see the whole screen. For those of you who are health folk, you wouldn't know Michael, but Michael is the guru in the world of change in education. And he wrote the foreword to my book, and we've worked together for quite some, I guess, 20 more years. So I guess what we're saying is that if education and where children go to school, and that's what Nelson Mandela said way back when, you know, God bless the passing. But what he said in the 90s to me was that education happens in every community with or without a school. That it is the mothers who gather children together under a tree or something, and that's what we're going to work with. And that's what we did. So the family is the core of what Roots of Empathy does. It's bringing the love of the home into the classroom and celebrating it. Roots of Empathy doesn't just come to a classroom, it comes to a community. We only work with collaborations. And that's why you've got all the right people here today. So I guess to say that I think empathy is baked into the community. And if we bring all the right people to the table and we celebrate families and we celebrate children, and we celebrated our beleaguered teachers, if we celebrate all the people who work tirelessly in health, we have no heroes in this. We have the planet's youngest teachers. The youngest volunteers are the little Roots of Empathy babies. Roots of Empathy comes without any talk about any violence. The research says Katie will share that with you unequivocally. Roots of Empathy's mission was to build a more caring, peaceful, and civil society. And we do that. We have research from 3 continents to prove we do that, because my feeling at the get-go of Roots of Empathy, it's altogether too cute. How easy would it be to dismiss it, saying, oh, it's just fluffy babies. It's just about cooing at babies. It is about the heart of what it is to be a human being. In our very first recovery program lesson, and in our very first traditional classroom lesson, we show the children the little baby, and then we show them the Roots of Empathy doll, and we say to them, what is the difference between this doll and this baby? And in Roots of Empathy, we only ask experiential questions and authentic questions. I mean, we use a Socratic method. We ask a question because we want the children to think, not that we are so much interested in what they utter, but what they think. And as an old school marm, I can tell you, you're so accountable as a teacher for a myriad of things. Now you're a social worker as well. But the teacher is accountable that the children do know that 2 and 2 are 4. The Roots of Empathy instructor is accountable for helping the children think broadly and deeply. We want the children not just to be global learners, but global feelers. We want them to have deep, deep empathy. And the thing is, we have the evidence to show that you can do that. And my original thesis was right. When empathy goes up, this is what the Dalai Lama does all the time. When empathy goes up, aggression and violence and cruelty and bullying, all of those things that hurt the souls, not just of children, but all of us. So the children in all the Roots of Empathy programs, whether it's the virtual program or the program on a green blanket in the classroom, they all look at what is the essence of being human. It's the capacity to feel. And that is what will build the caring, peaceful, civil societies, that children will realize that they are not so different from the people on the other continent. They may speak a different language, but the highway of our connectivity is our capacity to feel. We teach emotional literacy. It's the first language. It's a universal language. And I think we live in a lot of what I would call emotionally illiterate societies, that we teach children various literacies, and I think amazing what we've done with STEM and all these other initiatives that schools have jumped right on. We want to work hand in glove with schools because that's where you see your big change. And I think, you know, very often it's the teacher who reaches the child. You can't teach a child unless you reach them. And Roots of Empathy brings our messages, and the classroom teacher continues with the messages. Even in our recovery program, we write a special piece to give the teacher after every single lesson. We don't do that in our traditional program because we have 27 classes a year long. But everything we do, we see it as a gift to the teacher, because that's where you have the real deep relationships growing with the children. So our vision is to change the world child by child, and you can take it further, school district, county, council, however you want to go about that. But I think some of the things that we see in Roots of Empathy that people really appreciate is that we use a lot of art and literature. And I can tell you, having worked with abused children, children draw with moral clarity. They never lie. And in all the social workers who have helped save little souls who've been so blighted by generational sexual abuse and physical abuse and neglect, I used various therapies, you know, dance therapy, music therapy, art therapy, play therapy. We've done the medallions and the sand, and we've done all of that. Nothing compares to art therapy because children paint their pain. And we are not social workers. We do not social work the children, but by golly, the classroom teacher who is there when the Roots of Empathy instructor is working with the children, the classroom teachers are brilliant at knowing where and how they should step in and offer some supports to a little child or to a family. So I think the mental health and well-being of children has always been first and foremost with us. A lot of people describe us as a crime prevention program. We're getting generous funding. In England, Katie is organizing a YEF long-term study where we have been identified as being one of the programs that will proactively prevent people from knife violence down the road. So we are a preventative intervention. We've always been called that. Children don't like to hear we're bullying prevention, so we don't say we are. But what happens is bullying goes down very, very significantly everywhere we are. And I think some of the I guess the theories that we have or the philosophies we have, we work with the concept of intrinsic motivation. That's very foreign in school systems because school systems have to have a ranking. Competition is something, and I'm not against competition, but in Roots of Empathy, we're about collaboration. Thank you, Katie. 5 minutes, I saw it. So we're very much helping the children understand themselves. And when we demonstrate intrinsic motivation and try and create a risk-free learning environment for children while we're teaching them emotional literacy, and emotional literacy is something that we learn from the little baby, whether it's on the screen or on the green blanket. The idea that you coach children to observe a baby's emotional cues so that they can learn to label those names, apply it to themselves, see it in their classmates, and develop the capacity to talk about their feelings. And I think this capacity to talk about how you feel, if teachers only, the children would talk to the teachers. The teachers are the portal to getting help. And this changes everything all over the place. And I guess self-regulation is something that we really look at. And emotional regulation, the very first step, is understanding what your feelings are, having the names for them and being able to discuss them. So in the whole mental health and well-being rubric, that is something that we absolutely are committed to. I guess the other thing is that I think that children are the most marginalized group in the universe, and that we really see them as changers. We have been saying since 1996 to the children around our green blankets, there are many things that you may think are wrong or unfair, and they're not your fault. But if you see something that you think you might be able to help with, then you can stand up. And we don't push them or pressure them, but I can tell you the moral righteousness of a 5-year-old is significant. Don't mess with it. So we see children heroically saying, I think you hurt her feelings. Or, making things like that, saying things like, would you like to play? Or saying, do you want to sit with us for lunch? Because they come to understand empathy being understanding how people feel and the ability to feel with them. So I think I'll just stop now, and I'm very happy to stay on for a bit, and I'm happy to ask any questions. Katie really is the one who knows the community inside out and upside down.
Thank you so much, Mary. I hope that gave everyone a real insight to the beginnings of Roots of Empathy, and some inspiration about where it came from, and Mary's view about how it fits into the world and the important job that it's doing. Mary, if we've got any questions now for you, are you fine to stay on for a couple of minutes?
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. If anybody's got any questions, perhaps you want to post them in the chat, and Rose could let us know if any come in for Mary.
Oh, hello, Rose. I've never met you. Nice to see you.
Someday.
Yeah, and folks, if anybody just has a comment, I'm also very interested. If it's not a direct question, a comment. I'm really anxious to connect with you. I can't wait to get out there. I'm hoping before the snow flies that I'll be able to get out your way, but doesn't look very good today.
Would be fantastic.
Guys, I'm just I'm putting some links in the chat. Do feel free to put any questions in there, and we'll go through them at the end.
And if there was any question now, Rose, I would respond. If
Yes.
someone just wants to wave at you, it might be quicker.
I think, don't think there's any questions.
We've got a question
yes.
about the recording, and that's fine. We will share the recording after the session.
We have one question. So, can the baby be a teacher's child, or is it best to be a parent carer child from the school community?
I can tell you that in schools where we have had Roots of Empathy, there are teachers who have said to us, what month should I get pregnant in order to be a Roots of Empathy mother? It is drop dead gorgeous when a teacher is a Roots of Empathy mother, because it humanizes a whole school. Number one, every child in the school falls in love with that teacher. They see you, children think you sleep in school. They don't think you have a life. They certainly don't think you're a parent. And we've had lots of male teachers come back and be, with their partner or on their own. The thing is, it doesn't have to be the teacher of the classroom, because they'd probably be on mat leave. But even if they weren't, that would also be fine. Children absolutely lose their hearts to people relating to their babies. And we can use the love in school. It's a very tough job being a teacher. And these days, even more so. So we have many, many Roots of Empathy parents who are teachers. There's someone waiting to get in, folks.
Yeah, I just let them in. So the other question is, does the baby have to be aged between 2 to 4 months?
Yes, they do, and I'm going to cover that in. I'm going to do the kind of nuts and bolts of the program and everything that the sort of structure of it in a moment. So we could move on to that if there are no more questions for Mary specifically about how she came to start Roots of Empathy or anything like that, then if we get any through later, Mary, maybe we'll
Sure.
connect with you.
Yeah, I think, Katie, the time that you folks have together is better spent with you giving the nuts and bolts. And at any other time, I'm very happy to respond. We could do it by email, however you like. But Damian, thank you for the invitation. And have a good evening, I guess, to everybody there. And I'm about to start my rainy day. And delightful to be with you. And I look forward to the opportunity to shake some hands in this new post-COVID world. Bye.
No,
Thanks so much for joining us, Mary.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Great. So then let me just get myself set up with a presentation that I hope you're all going to be able to see.
What happened today then, love?
Is that, can people see that presentation now?
Talk to me about it. Because I
Yeah.
didn't answer me, so I didn't know what the reason was.
I think
Be-
it's maybe if people could turn their
the door, yeah, answer from the phone, all the messages. Being so worried. And then the head wasn't there, and she came back at lunch. I was meant to have a meeting with her, and then someone ran off.
Did everybody put their things onto mute? I think there we are. I think we might have caught it. Bless somebody. Okay, right, we'll just try that again then. One second. Okay, can everybody see that? Rose, can you give me a thumbs up? Excellent. Okay, so this is like the nuts and the bolts of the programme. I might be going over some of the things that Mary touched upon with us, probably not in quite such an inspirational way, but hopefully it will give you all the information that you need to get a full understanding of the programme and whether it sounds like something that would be appropriate for your school or for your colleagues to train as a Roots of Empathy instructor. So we're super pleased to be here with you, you know, presenting to Liverpool, and we're really keen to get the programme going there. So we'll start off with a familiar maths question. And Johnny has 3 apples. If Mary takes 2 apples, what do you think the answer is? Well, the answer for Roots of Empathy is how will Johnny feel? So how Johnny feels is so important to how he's able to learn. And that's what Roots of Empathy is all about. It addresses the affective, emotional side of learning. Roots of Empathy is an emotional and competence building programme. So Roots of Empathy is an evidence-based, as Mary said, classroom programme that has shown significant effect in reducing levels of aggression among school children by raising social and emotional competence and increasing empathy. We work with the whole classroom, so we take a universal approach and we engage the onlookers and the bystanders, and it's not a targeted programme. So we're not just targeting bullies, aggressive children or the victims of those instances. It's really for the whole classroom, and we create a community of care within that classroom. And that what the research shows us is that Roots of Empathy reduces aggression and it increases pro-social behaviour, so kind, caring, sharing behaviours, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now, as Mary said, our mission is to build caring, peaceful and civil societies through the development of empathy in children and adults. And we explain empathy to children by telling them it's about understanding how somebody feels. Roots of Empathy is an experiential learning program, so the children really get to experience both the program through their heart and their mind. And there's Mary. So that was just a little potted history there about Mary starting the program in 1996. So she was that ahead of the game in terms of all of the neuroscience and child development, things that we know now. We became a registered UK charity here in the UK in 2016. And our organisation's programmes have reached nearly 1 million children on 4 continents, and we're delivered in multiple languages. So our curriculum has been put into 7 different languages. In a typical school year, we would welcome 3,000 tiny teachers and their parents to community classrooms. And that means that we're working with approximately 75,000 children. Roots of Empathy has been awarded Education Innovation Award from 100 for 4 years in a row. They're a Finnish education award maker. And this year we were shortlisted by the 100 in their SEL Spotlight competition. In the UK, we've got programmes running in all of the 4 countries. And in England, we have programmes in Northampton, Nottingham, Birmingham, London and Doncaster. And we hope that Liverpool will soon be joining the family. So our goals are to foster the development of empathy. And as you heard Mary say, she believes that empathy is caught, not taught. It can't be taught in the traditional way in the classroom. To develop emotional literacy, and I'll talk a bit more about that later on, and to reduce levels of bullying and aggression and violence, and to promote pro-social behaviours, which we've touched on already. We also help the children to increase their knowledge of human development and learning about infant safety. And we have some safety messages that we share with the older children and touch with sensitively with the younger children. And that's about sudden infant death syndrome, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, secondhand smoking and shaken baby syndrome. So they're all dealt with very carefully, but we know that this is such an important message to share with children, and that goes back out to the families as well. So we're also preparing students to be responsible citizens and to be responsive parents when they get there. Our programme has been given a gold standard. It meets this basic criteria for researchers, and that's that it hits 5 of the gold standard qualifications. So we have an accredited curriculum, we have 3 manuals that instructors use and pick up, and everything is laid out really beautifully and easily for them to access. We have a training programme that's certified. We have an ongoing mentoring programme for our Roots of Empathy instructors, and they're also provided with ongoing professional development throughout their Roots of Empathy career. So it's a really well supported programme for our instructors. We've also got the backing behind the programme of the independent research and evaluation, and that's been gathered over 20 years. So we feel quite confident in our recipe. Now we get on to the best bit, talking about the babies. So at the heart of the Roots of Empathy programme, as you might have gathered, is a local parent and baby, and they visit the school throughout the school year. And when the baby starts, we've had this question already checking in about this, the baby must be between 2 to 4 months old, and that's just so we can kind of track the curriculum along with, you know, their development. And the baby wears a little uniform, so they're our teacher, and they wear the little teacher uniform. A trained Roots of Empathy instructor coaches the students to observe the baby's development and to label the baby's feelings when they visit. And in this experiential learning, the baby is the teacher, and a lever which the instructor uses to help children identify and then reflect on their own feelings and the feelings of others. So I'd like to just play you a little 4-minute video now. It was done by the BBC about Roots of Empathy, and so I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you back here in 4 minutes.
Katie, I don't think there's any sound.
Ah, okay, thank you. Sorry about that. 1 second, let me just come out of here. Huh. Okay, I've got it. I thought I'd flicked the sound button across already, but I obviously hadn't. So let's try that again. Okay. Is that sharing?
Okay. There we go. Our long-term goal is building a more caring, peaceful, and civil society where everybody feels a sense of belonging. One little girl said, "You just can't help yourself but love her." But we're learning that she communicates how she's feeling, not with words as we do, but through her body, through her emotions, through her facial expressions, her tone of voice. Did you notice what she did? Now she's got two. They compared that she could not pick up the ball before she did today. So they're learning about infant development. She has two hands or one hand? She's vulnerable. She's more vulnerable than they are. And we have many vulnerable children in our classrooms. And so it elicits this care for her.
She's adorable and she loves to play with us.
Babies, like, first they're very delicate, so you have to handle them, like, very gently. One thing I like learning about of roots of empathy is learning about a newborn human body. She can get, like, happy when you do this or, like, something fun, but then if you're, like, taking stuff from her, she'll get angry really easy.
If children just had the capacity to own their feelings, to understand them, to know how to talk about how they feel, they would not be islands. Our mental health would go up. Roots of Empathy is a bit of a trick. We use a baby as a vehicle to help children find the vulnerability and humanity in this little baby, so that then you can flip it back to their own experiences.
Do you think she's persistent, or do you think she's easily gives up? She's persistent. She's persistent. Put your hand up if you're persistent when you're trying to do something really hard. And put your hand up if sometimes it's frustrating to try and do something new. Do you think it's frustrating?
They realize this sudden universe of everybody in the world feels the same as me. We're not so disconnected. It's very hard to hate someone if you realize they feel like you. It's very hard to be bullying someone if you realize that.
An eagle fly, a rabbit, a beaver, a crazy elephant. Na 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 na, na 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 na, na 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 na. Roots of Empathy helps with teaching kids not to, like, fight.
How do you feel when she's sad?
I feel like I want to cheer her up. Sad as well. Like, what happened? What's wrong?
If we are educating children who can read well and compute well, but can't relate well, we will have a failed society. Learning how to relate to one another requires empathy. You have to understand how the other fella feels.
Bye, baby Naomi. We'll see you soon. See you very soon. Thanks, guys.
Let me just get mine. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed that and it gave you a sense of the programme in action in the classroom. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail now. But you will have seen that the children sing the baby in and they sing the baby out, and that's all part of the structure of the Roots of Empathy family visit, and they sit around a green blanket. So that's all helping them to lower their cortisol levels, increase their serotonin, have a nice, time within the Roots of Empathy sessions as well. So overall, the Roots of Empathy program is based on the school year. So all of the holidays that the school year takes, that's fine. The Roots of Empathy works around that. 1 second. Next to the family, schools are the most influential institution for socialising children and shaping the next generation of citizens. So Roots of Empathy is delivered in schools and follows the school year for that reason. Our local parent and baby come and they visit the classroom once a month. So they make 9 family visits, and there are 9 themes, and each theme has 3 visits for a total of 27 visits. So I'll talk more about that structure to you on the next slide. A trained Roots of Empathy instructor follows the curriculum manual and delivers the programme. And the Roots of Empathy curriculum reflects the overall goals of education and supports learning in languages, arts, health, mathematics, music, social studies and science, as well as helping the children to develop their social and emotional literacy. We have a specialised curriculum we've got 3 versions of the curriculum, so it covers each age group and works to the learning outcomes for each age group. So how the programme works, so each theme, the 9 themes, has a pre-family visit, a family visit and a post-family visit. In the pre-family visit, the Roots of Empathy instructor and the classroom teacher and the children are present without the family being there, and they focus on infant development and preparation for the family visit. We set the scene for the theme. So if the theme is crying, for instance, we might talk about, well, why do you think a baby might cry? Why do you think people cry? So it's just lots of asking questions and getting the students to predict what they might see and the changes that they might see in the baby's development since the last visit. So that sets the scene for the family visit, and the family visit is, we always talk about it like the jam in the sandwich of the Roots of Empathy sandwich, because it's the delicious bit. So you saw the children singing the baby in, and they sit around the green blanket, and really the baby, is always puts on a performance for the children. They've always got something new to show us from the last time they visited. So there's been like a month in between that visit. So in the video there, you just saw that baby Naomi was able to use her hands on the ball for the first time. And so the children are able to track all of these developments in the baby's first year of life, which is just fascinating. So the instructor guides the students to observe the baby's feelings. So maybe the last time that baby Naomi was there and she couldn't reach the ball, she was a bit frustrated. And so the instructor will have been able to help the children to see that. And so through questions, that's what the instructor explores all of this. And the instructor demonstrates the baby's development and discusses temperament and attachment through interaction with the baby and the baby's parent. And we use special exercises, songs and specific toys that are all written into the curriculum and that are provided as part of the programme. Students ask the parent questions about the baby and about their development, and they love to hear stories of the baby at home. So then in the post-family visit, that's back to just being the Roots of Empathy instructor and the classroom teacher and the children. And this really is about the children then reflecting on their own feelings. So say again, we take the theme of crying, then maybe it's thinking about what was the last time when you were upset, and maybe drawing a picture about that or discussing it in a group. So it's really a time for the students to reflect on their own emotions and get a better understanding of their emotions and the feelings and emotions of their peers as well. So that's the empathy part. This picture you can see was taken during a Theme 7 family visit with a junior class. Now I'll come on and I'll tell you a little bit about the emotional literacy side. So emotional literacy is one of the goals of Roots of Empathy. It's often referred to as the social and emotional competence, and children wear their feelings in their behaviour. So in Roots of Empathy, children learn that feelings are universal and all feelings are okay. When we are more aware of our feelings and the feelings of others, we are kinder to each other and we get along better. We have more positive and successful relationships. I'd like to read a quote from one of our classroom teachers who describes her Roots of Empathy children in this way. After a year of exposure to the programme, I'm amazed at the collective abilities to engage in critical thinking tasks. They are keen problem solvers in small and large group settings. Individually, they're able to make independent decisions, no small achievement for 6-year-olds. And I have absolutely no bullying in my classroom, a feat I attribute solely to the programme. In fact, my students have become self-appointed peacemakers on the playground, and they're often bringing students from other years and classes to our classroom to solve their problem by talking it over. And of course, this understanding of other people's feelings helps us to take their perspective. So what emotional literacy looks like in the classroom. So we've talked about observing and labelling the baby's emotions. So we sit around the green blanket and we look at the baby's body language. They don't have verbal language, so it's really getting the children to tune in to what other language can we use and explore and observe from the baby. So there's body language, facial expressions, reflecting, and then we ask the children to reflect and identify on their own emotions. And being emotionally literate includes being fluent in discussing your feelings, and when trust is established in the Roots of Empathy classroom, children are comfortable discussing how they feel. And then that leads on to an understanding of others and their emotions and a general comfort in discussing emotions. So Roots of Empathy builds a supportive environment in the classroom through risk-free learning so that the children feel comfortable in expressing their emotions and discussing them. So Mary talked a bit about our research, and we do have a lot of research, and I think Rose is going to post up the web link for that in the chat for you. But this is just kind of an overview here of our general research. Research on the programme began at the University of British Columbia in 2000. Roots of Empathy children relative to comparison children demonstrated significant improvements from pre-test to post-test in the following areas. They had an increased knowledge of emotions, an increased social understanding, increased pro-social behaviours with peers, so they were kinder, they were able to share more, and they were more inclusive, and a decreased aggression with peers. Not only did the children in Roots of Empathy show significant decreases in aggression, but children in comparison classrooms evidenced significant increases in aggression across the school year. So that's very interesting. A study in Manitoba found that these results lasted for at least 3 years, and that study looked at children in nursery, in year 5 and in year 9. In Canada, the children stay with one classroom teacher for a little bit longer than our children in the UK, so the programme goes a bit higher. So the outcomes have been studied in children from nursery and to year 9, and in all studies results were consistent across age groups, and results were also consistent among girls and boys. So in the UK, we work with up to year 6, so basically from reception to the end of primary. And if you want a little bit more information about our research, we've got many of the studies up on our website, so please do go and have a look if that's something that interests you. So what does this mean for mental health poor emotional regulation skills are involved in most childhood and adult psychopathologies, so depression, anxiety and conduct disorder. And we know, we're being told, you know, increasingly that mental health is becoming a more serious issue for our children. An increased understanding of emotions helps children to regulate their emotions and reduces the risk of negative mental health outcomes. So that is why we are doing all of this. So now let's talk a little bit about who could become a Roots of Empathy instructor. So with our work in Liverpool, we're funded by the Youth Endowment Fund, and we're looking for community volunteer instructors. So they could be anyone, but in particular they might have come from a background like a retired teacher, community support officer or health visitor, early childhood educators. We've worked in Doncaster, we've worked with health visitors, and that's been a really beautiful connection for them to children that perhaps they saw as babies. And in Northampton, we've worked with community support officers who have trained as Roots of Empathy instructors, and they go in without their uniform on, and they've told us that it really helps to break down barriers out on the street as well. So it's very interesting, the different effects that can have. So instructors undergo a comprehensive 4-day training and certification, and they receive ongoing mentoring. And while the Roots of Empathy instructor is delivering the programme, the classroom teacher benefits from the unique opportunity of observing the students from another vantage point. So they're not standing at the front and having to teach, they are able to sit back and observe their children. The classroom teacher does not teach Roots of Empathy as it's a major time commitment, and it also includes an out-of-school visit, so it would preclude the teacher from observing their students. So what do we need from head teachers that take part? I think one of the most important responsibilities for a head teacher is just to have a really strong commitment and understanding to the programme. And also it's fantastic if they're able to help us find a local parent and baby who would like to participate in the programme. So as Mary said, it can be anyone from the school community. So it could be a teacher's baby, it could be a sibling is already at the school and they've had a recent baby, and head teachers are often quite well placed, or the people in the office can support them with that in terms of knowing who might be expecting a baby. So that's a really fantastic thing, and we can provide lots of support with that as well. For this programme as well, there is going to be an element of research, and so we would just appreciate the head teacher's commitment in helping that research to take place and happen. For our teachers, I think when teachers are keen to have Roots of Empathy and understand and agree with the programme philosophy, they describe it as a gift, and it allows them to observe their children, as we said, and to see their children from a different perspective. We encourage schools to provide the programme to those teachers who volunteer to be involved, as they will be most engaged, and that's when we see the best outcomes for the programme. The outcomes are strengthened when the teacher's involvement builds towards the overall outcomes. It provides a trusting environment, and it allows the children to see their teacher from a new perspective. It can be really freeing to hear stories about when a teacher gets sad or angry, just like the children do. A teacher will hear the instructor talk about risk-free learning and creating a risk-free learning environment, and that's a vital element of Roots of Empathy. And is key to the success of the programme. And so what this means from a Roots of Empathy perspective is that we don't place a value on students' responses or their work, so we don't give praise or criticism. We tell the children that in Roots of Empathy only, we are not watching for correct spelling or neat writing or specific objectives in their artwork. Artwork is to be free, an expression of emotions, and it can help to look at it as an art project as opposed to an outcome-based project. We're seeking, I think Mary touched upon this, we're seeking to find out not what the children know, but what they're thinking, and there's no right or wrong in that. So our instructors are trained to respond with a thank you or paraphrasing what the children have said, and that opens the door to intrinsic motivation for the children. And very quickly what we see is that children maybe that wouldn't normally put their hand up or offer things into a conversation in the classroom start to feel like it's okay to express their points of view. So these are just a few little overviews of what the different players in the Roots of Empathy programme feel that it brings to their school and their lives. So from head teachers, we hear that children enjoy the programme and it has a positive effect on attendance, interestingly. So children like to come in for Roots of Empathy. The programme creates a more caring classroom, and it's great for the instructor's confidence. And it's a vehicle for the values of the school. So quite often schools have values that they'd like to talk about, and Roots of Empathy is a real kind of active way of putting those into action. Teachers say that it helps children to think about the future and how they will parent. It helps children to be better at working together. It helps children to be better at talking about their emotions. And teachers get reports from parents that the children go home and are more helpful at home. So that's pretty awesome. Here's a quote from a teacher. She says, "I have seen a big change in children who would typically react violently in the past. They can now calm themselves down appropriately. Children also have better understanding of bullying and how to cope with aggressive behaviour. The children are more in tune with other people's feelings and they understand the impact certain actions can have." That was from a Year 3 teacher in Deptford in London. So here's a little bit of the overview feedback that we get from the volunteer families that come in. They say that they're really pleased to be able to give something back to the community, that it's great to see their baby through the eyes of the children and have that applause for their baby's development. They learn more about their baby's development as well. And it also can have an impact on reducing the isolation that can be felt in maternity, with maternity leave. So, and our children, the programme's all about, I love that picture, that's Jonathan and Megan from Northumberland. One child said, "Roots of Empathy can teach the world that we should understand other people's feelings, and any time a person is being bullied, we should stand up for them." That's a Year 5 student from Deptford. And you can see here how fond of baby Charlie Jonathan and Megan were. So we're coming to the end of the kind of nuts and bolts, as we said, presentation. And so this is the kind of next steps if you would like your school to be involved with Roots of Empathy this year. And also we're on the lookout for instructors. So if you are working in a service where you think yourself or you know someone who would be interested in becoming an instructor, these are kind of the next steps for taking it forward. So we have a memorandum of understanding, and we will ask MYA if they're able to share schools' emails with us. So I think the best way to do that is just to let them know that you're happy for us to have your email, and then we could send out an MOU to you. Obviously take some time to read through that. It's really clearly laid out in terms of the process and the expectation from Roots of Empathy and from the school for the programme year. And then if you could get that back to us as soon as possible, signed, then we're going to be accepting those as a kind of application and a commitment expression of interest, and it will be on a first come first serve basis. So once a school's done that, I think the next step for a school would be to start looking out for a volunteer family, and we can help with that. We've got posters, we've got, we're connected into various services, so we can support you with that. But also, if you've got ideas, because it sounded like some people had ideas already from the chat earlier about a baby that's 2 to 4 months old, then please do let us know about that. For instructors, there's an application process that we would need to get through, and we are on a bit of a tight time frame because we want to host the training, the 3-day training, on the 2nd to the 4th of November. So that means that the application process needs to be done by then. We've got you signed up and you know that you're coming on the training. So again, Rose and I will share our contact details in the chat, and if you are interested in that, or if you would like to have a further conversation about becoming an instructor and, you know, a bit more detail about what that involves, I'd be happy to do that, as would Rose. And we can even host like another smaller briefing for your teams if you've come from a service and you think actually it'd be really interesting for your team to hear a bit more about becoming an instructor. We'd be happy to do that. So just get in touch and let us know.
Katie?
Yes.
Just to remind you that we sent out a MailChimp form across schools and also looking for instructors. So put the information on both, and we've had about in the range of about 33 sign-ups. I think more was still happening today. Okay. So we'll be able to follow up with those people as well for the memorandum of understanding.
Fantastic. So I'm going to come out of the presentation now. And thank you very much. Nice to see all your faces again. And if are there any questions in terms of taking the programme forward, perhaps you can either wave your hand and put your voice on, or drop it in the chat, and Rose will help me try and see if I don't manage to see you. I think Rhiannon, you've got your hand up.
Hiya. Yeah, I was just wondering, in terms of the obviously you've put a little bit there about the process, and you've got some training days scheduled for people who were interested in becoming one of the volunteers.
Yeah.
Following that, what, and I know it's obviously difficult in terms of it depends on what the uptake looks like, but do you have any sort of idea about what that looks like then for that individual in terms of the commitment of, you know, man hours for this?
Yes, absolutely. So the program is the 27 sessions. So I think for an instructor, the overall commitment is there are 4 days of training that are compulsory training. They're 9:30 to 4:30. Full days of training, really supportive, lovely. So we have 3 up front, and then we have 1 midway through the year. That's scheduled for the beginning of November. We would then be hoping that instructors were pretty much ready to go into schools the week after that. So what they would do is they'd have a meeting with the head, and they'd also have a meeting with the parent and baby, and just make sure that the head and the classroom teacher, and just make sure that everybody's comfortable with the programme, they understand the programme and what's expected from the different parties. So there's those 2 meetings. Then there's the actual 27 sessions, and there's probably about half an hour prep, 20 minutes, half an hour prep for each theme. So that's the kind of overall commitment that's spread out over the school year, and the instructor works with the classroom teacher and the parent to work out, you know, when it would work with their schedule, when it would work with the classroom teacher's schedule. So finding a time, it quite often would take place in a PSHE lesson, and, you know, it fills a lot of the kind of learning outcomes of that. So that is done on an individual basis in that session with the instructor and the classroom teacher, and we can offer advice and support around that, and also the instructor will have been assigned their mentor at that point, so they're always a really good point of contact to go back to and say, oh, I'm just struggling with, like, you know, working out when mum can make it to the visit and when the classroom teacher can have it. And we've been running this program for such a long time. We have a wealth of experience, and our mentors are really good at helping people to manage those issues. So does that answer your question? Sorry, it was quite long-winded.
Yeah, thank you. I suppose I'm just trying to think. So I'm from Children's Service Merseycare, which is our NHS trust, so sort of school nurses and health visitors.
Yeah.
So just sort of trying to think, you know, how and where, and if that you know, there could be an option. And you know, absolutely looks fantastic. But in terms of that time commitment, and apologies, my little boy was knocking on the door in the middle of there, and I was quickly walking to that.
We like having young visitors.
So yeah,
does it sound like it could be doable? What?
Yeah, well,
from our perspective, it needs discussion.
Yeah, I'll take it back. And again, you know, that would be per school, and I suppose I don't know at the minute how many schools would be potentially looking. So
Yes.
how many volunteers that would then, you know, look like, and you know, different people. If they're, like you say, if we have people that were retired and were looking for that kind of voluntary, then they might be happy to take on 2 schools in a year period or more. I don't know. So I suppose it's just trying to visualize that at the moment.
Yeah, well, if there's anything, you know, in terms of as you start to explore that, and we can help you out having a further discussion about it, and just kind of, you know, laying it out for you a bit more clearly, then absolutely happy to do that.
That's great, thank you.
Has anybody else got any questions?
I'll just give you some from the chat. So
there's yes, please.
Paula Price. Is it the school who has to find a baby and a parent?
So it's wonderful if the school can find a baby and a parent. However, if it seems that it's just not a time when people around that school's specific community have had a parent and baby, you know, there isn't one that fits within the age range, or then we can help you to find a parent and baby as well. So we've worked with health visitors and midwives in the past, and that's been really fruitful in terms of you know, helping to source families for schools. It is really lovely if they can come from the school community, because obviously there's just that extra bit of connection, you know, that the baby's probably likely to come to that school, you know, when they're older. We've just had in Northampton, we've just had 2 of our babies start at school this year, and it's lovely. So, you know, it's kind of like that circular thing, but equally we can help to find families from outside of the school as well. Is there any more questions?
Just a couple more. So yeah, who do we get the MOU from? It's from Andrea.
Yeah, so we'll send that out. So Damian, do you think?
I'm posting the links now. So there's a link there to become a volunteer instructor.
Yeah.
And then I'm just looking for the one I sent out about school sign up. You just give me a moment, I'll post that on.
And so then you'll have the MOU, and we've got 10 plus places for schools in Liverpool this year. So I think, you know, there might be a lot of interest. We're hoping there's going to be a lot of interest. So it will be on a first come, first served basis. This programme is a 3-year programme. So we're working with the Youth Endowment Fund over 3 years, and next year and the following year we will need to bring in new schools. The only sort of caveat to that is next year and the year after, it's part of a randomised controlled trial, so that we're going to be evaluating the programmes, and so schools that put their hat in the ring in those years may or may not get the programme, and that won't be our call. It will be part of the evaluation process. Are you just sharing what
I'm just sharing that what it looks like. That's the primary school sign up, and then I will share the instructor sign up as well, but we'll send that out to people. And as you can see, the video you've just watched is on there, the sign up form is on there. I think the memorandum of understanding is also on there.
Thank you, Damian. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So that's the sign up for schools, and we've already started to get that populated. Fantastic. And then for the instructor sign up,
Yeah, so Paula was also asking, would each school need to have a volunteer to be an instructor?
No, so we're hoping the instructors are going to come from outside of the school. They could be a part of the school community, but our hope is that people will be able to sign up. The training is quite costly, so we're hoping that once we've trained an instructor that they can make a commitment for delivering the program for 2 years. So although we'll be able to assign them to a school of choice this year, next year they will be placed in a school. We would we'll make sure that that's, you know, in a easy for them to get to, so we'll look into all of that. But so we're looking for instructors that are volunteer instructors, so not necessarily school staff, if that answers the question, Paula.
And then Ben Singleton is asking, are there any costs to the school?
We're asking for a £500 contribution towards the programme from school. So the training for the instructor, the equipment, the curriculum, the ongoing support will all be covered through the Youth Endowment Fund funding that we've got. But there are some startup and replenishable costs that we would appreciate if the school can support us with those. So that's what the £500 contribution. But if that's prohibitive, please get in contact with us, and we will, you know, we'll if you're a committed school and you want to get on board and get your MOU in, then we'll try and work around that with you.
And then Maria Beale is asking, how often will sessions run?
Yeah, so there's 3 sessions a month, excluding holidays, and you know we've left time for holidays. It really we leave it up to the instructor and the classroom teacher to create that schedule. So it might be that, you know, there's a school trip happening 1 week, so they miss a week there. So that's why it's really, you know, advisable for them to work that out themselves. But essentially, it works out as about 3 visits a month. Hey, Rhiannon.
Hi, sorry. Because you said before about it runs over a school year, does it need to start in September, or do you do staggered starts throughout a school year?
So we're starting in November. So what we like to do is give the classroom teacher, particularly this year, because they're coming back from, you know, a very unusual last year. We like to give them a chance to get to know the children in their classroom, to set the tone for their classroom. You know, have that bit of time up front. So there's still, so we'll start in November and we'll run through to June, the end of June.
So as soon as that initial training bit's happened, then it'll sort of start from there, and then that 4th day is in the January.
Yeah, and the instructors are all kind of geared up straight after the programme with, you know, how to run their meeting with the head and with the family, and how to run all of their visits and everything. So they feel kind of fully equipped to do that. Well, it's so nice that so many of you could join us. We're really thrilled. And Damian, it's great to hear that, you know, there's expressions of interest already coming in, and that looks superb, what you've set up on the website. So thank you so much for that. Were there any other questions, Rose?
No, I think that's everything. There were a couple at the beginning asking about the recording and the PowerPoint. Damian said that he will send it on to everyone. So just in case you didn't catch that.
Fantastic. Well, Rose has put our contact details up there. Please, you know, do reach out to us if you think of something after the presentation that is just like, oh, I didn't ask that. Then, you know, please just feel free to drop us a line. We like to be in touch. And just thank you for your time. And I hope you've liked what you've heard, and we look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Bye.
Good to see you all.
Rose?